Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields. Today, I've got Will Humphreys back. Will, thanks for
What
joining me
is
again.
up, Nathan Shields?
Hey,
Thanks for having me again.
thanks for joining me, man. It's always hard to get a hold of you. I just don't know where you are.
I know, right?
You're busy doing too many things. Just kidding. We've had you on plenty of times. Please listen to Will's previous podcast episodes where he shares all kinds of great nuggets of wisdom and his personal story and whatnot. But today we want to talk about other things and things that you can specifically do to help PT owners right now during the Great Resignation. If you're listening, if you're listening in 2021, towards the end of 2021, you hear that word getting thrown about because so many people are leaving the workplace. And it's made it hard, not only for PTs, and we've discussed this in the past about how to hire PTs and bring them on, but it's extending. I'm hearing this from other owners about how it's extending to having difficulty finding front desk personnel, billers, techs, for those who use techs. It's been hard to find people in general. And so I wanted to bring you in because you're working in that space quite a bit, and just kind of talk it through what we can do to help owners in this situation. Where do you start with someone who says, I'm having a hard time even finding front desk personnel? Where do you start with someone like that?
Yeah, it's interesting because when people are recruiting is like marketing in the sense that the way we typically do it as PT practice owners is that we do it in a cyclic manner where, things are pretty good, so we don't put attention on it. And then someone resigns. And then the crap hits the fan, we freak out, we throw, ads out. And so really the first thing I try to do is we look at it in two parts. When I'm helping clients overcome any recruiting issue, whether it's PT, front desk, billing, whatever, is that we have to triage the existing situation while we're building more of a long-term solution. And it's markets like this, the Great Resignation, that I think expose people's weaknesses around recruiting in general, because someone who can recruit well and who does it consistently, they're going to feel it, but they're not going to be impacted dramatically by it because they already have these systems that are you're going to withstand almost any change. So the first thing we do is, like, going back to your initial question, the very first thing I do is I look at the offering. So what is the offering, right? Like, there's no job ad cool enough to make up for a crappy job offer, So, and that's hard for people. We don't get training on this. So how do we develop a robust, oh my gosh, sorry about that. My phone went off. How do we develop a robust offering that then it's a matter of just getting it in front of people? So I always look at triaging the situation, like, why did they leave? Is there a C player on the team? Are they talking trash? Because I don't want to bring new people on if the culture stinks. But if everything looks good, immediately we put some ads out, and then we start looking at the offering and being like, all right, so what is the end in mind with this position? Is there leadership potential? Because all that stuff needs to be at least thought about before we create the job offering. And that's usually where I begin with people.
Go back a little bit. Let's talk just a little bit for people's support here. If this is someone that is leaving and you had the opportunity to say, give me some feedback. Why are you leaving? And they were able to provide you some constructive criticism. Or if they just said, screw you, I hate everything you do. You did this, that, and the other thing. I don't want to be a part of it. How you talked about triaging the situation. Yeah. So when someone leaves, like you said, you don't want to bring a new person into a toxic environment because you don't want them to get poisoned. You want them to feel successful and safe in this new job that they have, and you want them to be successful. So how do you triage a situation like that where someone maybe hasn't left on the best terms and is saying maybe there's something wrong with your company?
I love that question. And the answer briefly is to do a team assessment. And that's something that I teach on my YouTube channel. It's something that's free. You can go get it. But essentially, that is the way I start. If I don't know the team, I'll start with a team assessment. And it's a really simple tool. It basically helps people. Vern Harnish is the one who created it, right? It's a way of determining who's an A, who's a B, who's a C, and who's a D player on the team. And that's really important because, again, if the only person who left, and it's negative, is an identifiably C player, then we take their resignation, their departure as an opportunity to touch base with all the other team players, and in a way that's not desperate, right? Like, there's a way to do this, and do like a basic evaluation of the company through the employee's eyes. And so, the triage begins with this team assessment. And then from there, I coach my clients on like, all right, this is what you would do with a B player. Here's what you would do with a C player. Here's what you do with an A. And then when that person leaves, it determines whether or not how aggressively we're going to go put ads out.
Do you recall the title of that YouTube episode for their benefit?
The team assessment tool on the Healthcare Business Academy, the Will Humphreys channel. So if you go to that, it's my very first video I ever did.
Oh, really?
And it has like a free downloadable like PDF that you can use. I walk you through on the video how to do it. It's really cool. I've had a lot of positive feedback outside of physical therapy on that video as well.
Hey, really quick, I'm going to cut this part out right here.
Yeah.
Are you on your microphone?
No. Do I sound weird?
It sounds, you've had better audio in the past.
That's weird. Same old.
Do you have your boom mic and did your computer select it?
You know what? I don't know. I don't have anything. I'm going to plug. Oh, this isn't what I want. Let me plug in my little microphone.
Like the way it's going is fine, but I've heard better audio.
And I'll tell you, the other thing that concerns me is that like my computer's still freezing. So I think that might have something to do with it. Like I've got that window letting me know that you're recording, and I can't click got it. It's just sitting there looking at me.
Oh.
Ooh. Okay. Can you hear? Is it sound any different now? Or is it
it sounds a little bit better. Like before, it sounded like you were in the bathroom. Now it sounds better.
It's not. I don't want to sound like I'm in the bathroom.
No.
Okay, that is better.
Yeah, it is better.
Okay.
So we'll start from here.
Okay.
So we were talking about the
team assessment tool.
Your team assessment tool on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you've done the team assessment, you watch your videos, you've assessed the ABCD players, and you talked about creating a compelling offer. I don't know if you use that word compelling, but if you look at most of us, we would essentially write down the job description. Do you have a license? Can you treat patients? And,
right.
Can you type in Word documents or something like that?
Right.
That's not necessarily compelling. How does someone go about writing a compelling ad?
That's another great question. I actually did a master class on that last Thursday. Last Thursday, I did a master class and I had 60 people or so business owners across the country who attended it. And I talk about in depth on how to do it. So I'll hit the highlights of that here. And essentially the job offer, which isn't the job ad, right? Like the job ad is the advertisement on Indeed or LinkedIn.
Right.
The job offer is what comprises of what you're offering somebody to come join your team. And there's 5 main components to it. The first one is compensation, and that's anything that relates to money or time off. We combine those together because those are the first things that people look at. The second component that we want to put out there are anything that's insurance based. And so when it comes to insurance, I'm looking at health insurance, long-term or short-term disability. We're looking at, I even like wrap up my retirement plan into that because it's like an insurance against the future, and it helps me keep my head straight as to how it gets looked at by the potential recruitee. The third component is anything regarding education. So that could be Con Ed, it could be mentorship or residency programs. The fourth item would be specialized offerings. And this is where it starts to get more personalized. A specialized offering is things that we create for our ideal hire. So if it's a physical therapist and we know we're hiring in a remote area, so we want someone typically new grad or in that younger stage of life, then we better have some pretty robust programs around mentorship, like, going above the educational component and talking about like new PT mentorship programs, or let's say that you want to open locations. Well, we need to develop some leadership training modules and really, like, again, it doesn't have to be complicated, but just putting some organization around it is really great. And And then there's the unique offerings. The unique offerings, the fifth and last component, are things that are found inherently within our companies that we don't even realize that we should be advertising. For example, if you treat patients one-on-one, that's unique. It's not totally unique, but it is something that would speak to the right person. If you put it out there, like Sturdy McGee does this on his website for his PT company in San Francisco. One of the first ones is like one-on-one treatments for 45 minutes, really. Like that's one of the first things you see if you go to the recruiting page. But if you're in Alaska, you could promote some regional things that are unique to your company.
Right.
Maybe you offer electrodiagnostics and you're working with a company like Hands-On Diagnostics. Well, that would be where you put that in. And so creating the offer and really making that robust is the first thing. Then you go to the job ad and you can, okay. I can make my webinar, my master class, if you'd like. I could put that in the link below if you were interested. In that way, people can watch in detail. I've had really positive feedback from it. And I mean, this is stuff I've been coaching on for the last few years that has gotten tremendous results recently with people who were hitting brick walls on recruiting.
So you're starting at the offer first and then going back and developing the ad. Because because we usually would think, well, I need somebody, so I need to write an ad. Right. Whereas you're saying, no, let's get the most that we can out of this job, this position in our company. How can we make it the most exciting thing in the world and then work backwards? Just at least one step.
It's beginning with the end in mind. And I would say that instead of the ad being just as attractive or the job offering being as attractive as possible, we want to make it as attractive as possible for the right physical therapist. And I honestly, this is where most PT owners are it's so simple and obvious, but they're so desperate they don't see it, which is that we don't want to hire another owner's problem. We want to be really specific in that avatar or the ideal hire. And this is, by the way, the third thing I do. I create with my clients an avatar. We give them a name, we give them an age.
Nice.
They, all right, so this person, like, what do they dream about? What are they afraid of? Like we get into this like fake person's head. And sure enough, when we start thinking about them, when we create the offering and then the messaging, those people start answering because they hear it like this was written specifically for me.
And it sounds like the wording, well, the wording for that ad then just kind of speaks for itself, because then you're just speaking to that person's problems and concerns and what they're wanting from their next job. It seems like, do you find that as you developed this specific job offer and the exact avatar, that then the ad just kind of makes itself fairly easy to create?
Yeah, so if we do the work in advance and get that clarity, then when we go create the ad, immediately it's going to follow my first rule of recruiting, which is be different, right? Like, because if you look at current job ads, last month, Nathan, 81,000 job ads posted on LinkedIn.
Wow.
81,000. And the vast majority look identical.
They look PT like, space? Or are you talking
PT specifically?
Just PT.
For physical therapist.
You are kidding me.
Last month, LinkedIn.
Whoa. Crazy, man.
I don't know why it makes me laugh. But the point is that everyone, most people, I'd say 99%, it's just, like you said, it's more of a job description online. And they're not treating it like a sales page. Now, here's the caveat. We don't want to treat it like a job ad. I mean, there's a balance between professional and casual, right? Like there's this, so it's like comfortable, not casual, but comfortable. And it is a little bit more of an enrollment than a sales pitch. But for people who are like physical therapists wanted, we want someone who wants to be a part of a great team that's growing fast. All they're hearing, and when they hear growing fast, is that they're going to be super busy and overworked.
Right.
Like, and must have the following requirements. Here's some basic benefits you should be aware of. And they look identical and they wonder why no one answers. It's because they're not, they're being bombarded with those types of messages that don't stand out. So being different by curtailing the offering and the messaging for that individual is key to the success of the whole thing.
And not knowing if you've done this before, but I would think that would definitely differentiate, even if it wasn't PT, of course. Have you tried this with other positions in the company?
All the time. So most recently with one of our shared clients, we worked on a front desk position.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did in my coaching, again, we had a front desk person resign.
Yeah.
And a really good front desk person. Like, it was one of those companies where there was one front desk and there's like a part-time second, but like the main front desk person was truly amazing. And when that person resigned, this owner, because they're amazing, the person came to them before they even started looking for another job. And the reason they did was because they wanted to get into a different industry.
Right.
Yeah. Like if you ever have somebody do that on your team, take that as a huge compliment, because you've built a culture where, like in his case, people are like, they feel safe and they want you to succeed. And they come to you in advance and say, hey, listen, I want to get out of physical therapy and there's some openings coming up. Before I even look, I want to tell you about it. So he had some time to pivot around it. And when we coached together, what we came to the realization was not just what he needed today, but what he was going to need in 5 years. And then we created an avatar around it, not with as much detail as I described earlier, but we created this idea of like, yeah, let's advertise for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Let's advertise, and let's not like pay them that future leadership salary, but let's tell them we're looking to hire now at this level, but we want someone who wants this in the next 3 years.
Right.
And we don't, again, we never divulge more than we honestly can talk about, but we do want to be clear on what we want long term, because the right leader is going to go, yeah, I've been looking for a chance to go in there. So yeah, this principle is universal, and it's really not even universal to just recruiting. It's true when we're doctor relationships, patients, that concept of avatar, the concept of like long-term best fit is one that gets lost on us in physical therapy.
Yeah, I had that conversation with a client this morning where she's at that stage where they need a second front desk person, right? And she says, do you think it's about time? I mean, can I afford that? And the thing I had to remind her is that she's progressing and she's moving. And as you go into this second phase of, say, front desk growth, if there was such a thing, a second phase, she's moving from the top of the first phase and into that second phase. And you want to start with in what you're projecting here is you want to start creating what an ideal scene looks like with that second person. What are their responsibilities going to be? And then what could they be a couple years down the road, such that in her case, that second person needs to be completely capable if and when the first person leaves, so that there's no hiccup in performance whatsoever at the front desk, right? And now as she's going into the second phase, it's going to maybe be a little bit more of a strain financially, but having that second person in her situation is going to allow for more growth, improved arrival rates, maybe some more social media marketing, making sure over-the-counter collections is at 100% and not dropped off, making sure that authorized visits are 0 all the time.
Right.
I'm sorry, unauthorized visits are 0 all the time. And so that will then allow her to grow into that second phase and see more patients with an expanded front desk. So having that in mind, then the way you're saying it really makes it easier to create that ad that can stand out and get traction.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious, that's one of the biggest things that I struggle to is the mindset of growth with people. And again, it's not because they're not thinking growth minded. They just don't see growth for what it is, right? Like growth costs time and money.
Yeah.
So how do you, like in that scenario where someone's concerned about spending the money, how do you as a coach, how are you with them so that they can like open their mind and be like, yeah, I'm going to take that chance and hire that second person? What do you say to them, or what do you help them understand in order for them to like be willing to
the thing that clicked for me during that conversation, and I think I had the same thing from the client, from her, was boiling it down to the data. So I'm just going to use some examples. So break even point for her clinic at her size is, say, 100 visits, right? So that's her break even with a 10% profit margin built in. 100 visits. She figured that out with her CPA, and her arrival rate was, say, at 80%, which sucks. but it should be closer to 90. But if they, and she attributes it a little bit to some of the training that has to go with the front desk, but maybe that front desk is missing calls. Maybe they're missing people as they're walking out the door. So we bring on this second person. Maybe there are some unauthorized visits that are getting billed and denied because of that. So adding that other person at a salary at which an appropriate salary for a front desk person, that break-even point now becomes, I think we figured out 103 visits a week.
Got it.
And so to go from 100 to 103, considering an 80% arrival rate, increase your arrival rate with that added person, and immediately you've covered their costs, and it's not a big deal. Now you can even give them some marketing responsibilities and get an even greater ROI on their presence. So when it comes back down to the numbers, and I did this with another client who was questioning whether he should let a physical therapist go, because he was going to let go of insurance altogether, which accounted for like 25% of his business.
Wow.
Yeah. But it only accounted for like 10 or 12% of his gross revenues. So yeah, can you imagine?
No.
So yeah. So he said, well, with that cut, I'm not going to see as many patients. Maybe I should let go of this therapist. And so as we looked at the numbers, we're like, okay, what's your break even? Okay, what's your break even going to be now as you let go of that insurance? And are you significantly affected? Are you going to go negative? And we just said, well, now with these people being let go, there's going to be a chance for the higher payer insurance patients to come in and be seen actually 3 times a week instead of 1 or 2 times a week. Right. And so you can fill that back up. And as we broke it down, it was pretty simple to see that there was no reason to let her go. He just needed to actually get pulled out of treatment, patient care altogether. And this was the opportunity to get out of patient care altogether, keep that therapist on, and because she was aligned and she wasn't one that he really wanted to get rid of. And the numbers told him the story that he would be fine financially if he did so. So, man, I went really long on that one, but boiling it down to the numbers helped that mindset, or gave them comfort at least, that adding another person didn't significantly change the numbers all that much, such that it didn't affect them too much financially.
That makes sense too. I mean, I like how you do that, because obviously when you have people basing their decisions on emotion without data, they don't know. And that's what happens to most of our PT owners, right? Like we get to a place where we're just constantly in fear. What happens if I don't hire? And the one thing that's really clear is if we hire too much, that's money being spent. And it becomes really clear I'm going to blow it if I do. But I will tell you, my experience, hands down, is that people make the biggest mistake when they don't think of recruiting as a constant function in their business. Meaning they're always hiring. I don't care how fully staffed they think they are.
Right.
There is obviously careless hiring where you're just bringing people on because you're there. But like, I would say that happens very rarely comparatively to people who are just like, well, I don't know if I can afford it. And they don't realize that without the right people or the right redundancies in place, they'll never progress. And so they're in a constant state of having one person leave away from being sucked back into their business, or like their life being flipped upside down. So hiring is, one of our coaches told me, you got to think of hiring as like a never ending function. You're always hiring. You're always, and you tell your team that when you hire, it's like, guys, we're always hiring here because we're growing. Even if you're not planning on opening locations, it's like, we're constantly growing in different ways. So I'm always interviewing, I'm bringing, and that tells the team I could lose my job. That tells the team I am not everything to him or her. And that's important that people appreciate the temporary nature of any position, because anyone can be fired, including the owner. And sometimes the owner needs to be fired from certain positions, if not maybe running the show, depending on who they are. Right. And like, yeah, so the constant hiring creates the culture of appreciation, acceptance, and accountability. When we have PTs or front desk people lined up, ready to go, we are able to say no with a lot more firmness and kindness than we could if we're constantly in fear about that person leaving.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of that dynamic. As you have that bench I was sharing this with a client earlier, that she was really concerned about a particular physical therapist leaving because that therapist is so good,
Yeah.
getting great results with the patients, coming in, building a better culture in their clinic. And you never want to be in a position where you say, oh, please don't leave. I mean, you might be saying that in your head. You might actually have to come out and say it if you're in total fear when they do put in their resignation. But you never want to be in that position, because working out of fear is not powerful. You make poor decisions when it's fear-based, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll eventually turn around and either decide to start working yourself, seeing patients again, or hire somebody that's not a value fit because I've got patients waiting to be seen, right? And that's going to create even more headache, whichever path you take. So the coaching moment that time was, make sure you're close to that person and develop a relationship like you were talking about with your employee, that is such that if you're having thoughts about leaving, just let me know. Let's talk about it, so it's a win-win for both of us. And I can make changes if I needed to make. And if you still decided to leave, that's fine. And God bless, let's move on. While this entire time on the back end, while you're creating that good relationship, you've got the recruiting cycle just being pushed a little bit each week to have resumes, go to coffee with someone who's a potential fit, and maybe go through an interview process here and there, just to keep it going so that you're never in that fear-based dynamic at all times. I mean, there's just, it's the fear of them being gone that makes us make poor decisions. And so you can alleviate that by just doing that small little effort of recruiting at all times.
Yeah, it's so true. I in the masterclass, one of the things I said that what you were talking about reminded me is I began the webinar by just talking about how important is the recruiting part of our business relative to the other parts. Like if you compared recruiting against marketing, recruiting against, even quality assurance, how does it stack? And my answer is, and it still is, it's the single most important part of the entire business. And we don't treat it like that. We're so worried about new patients because I can always treat more patients is the attitude, which is why people are burning out. The truth is if we made recruiting the number one focus, if we became a company that is like the best at recruiting, you can solve for everything else. We can solve for marketing. Geez. We can solve for leadership. Maybe we're not great leaders, but if we know how to find and retain them, who cares if you don't know how to lead? Like it's like all billing, whatever it is. And it's funny because this has been really eye-opening for me lately when I've been home. One of the things that I've realized, my wife and I during COVID, we were looking, we homeschooled our kids for over a year, 6 months because we were in Europe together when I sold the company and I was taking a break. Then when I came back, it was like the month before COVID hit. So we just kept homeschooling him. And my wife is this amazing teacher, but she's also really entrepreneurial. And so I was talking to her one day because she's been teaching the kids for a full year. And I'm like, well, what do you want to do like next semester? She goes, well, it's hard because I have other things I want to do in addition to teaching, but teaching takes all my time. Mm-hmm. And I just said, well, let's go hire someone. Like instead of putting the kids back into the school systems, which in our area aren't the greatest, to be honest, or instead of like my wife sacrificing, we went through the same avatar process. We created this avatar. We found a school teacher who would like literally come exactly like it's 3 days a week for 3 hours each time, who has tons of experience, who's a little bit older because they don't need the money, but they actually want it. We found our version of Mary Poppins. She's this English woman who lives in our neighborhood who's like this master teacher, but she doesn't need to work full time. So she's not going to put up with the school districts.
But she's doing it out of love.
She's doing it out of love. We pay her well. Like our offer is pretty sweet, but it's also incredibly flexible. So if someone wants like full benefits, like they're not going to, that's not the job. And literally like our kids, I have a 9-year-old and 11-year-old that are doing 8th grade material now. Because we have this teacher, honestly, is even better than my wife. And my wife went from being the teacher to the principal. And as a principal, she's got freedom to create other things. Right. So like the idea that learning how to recruit is the single most important function of a CEO. And we only talk about it when we're desperate, like now, when people are desperate for PTs, or the Great Resignation is causing front desk people to get paid more by not coming in at all. Mm-hmm. Versus, starting to do what we would consider to be a thankless job at the front desk. Mm-hmm. So it's important.
No, you're exactly right. I was thinking, as you said that, and looking at typical organization charts, like if you could really master the hiring process and get really good at recruiting good people that are aligned with you, how many headaches that would solve across the entire company, right? The
Yeah.
HR headaches minimized, right? If they're good people and they're aligned with you, they're going to treat your patients well, and they're going to implement your programs that you implement because they're aligned with you, right? So statistics should improve, right?
Yeah.
And then marketing is going to be so much easier. And
Oh yeah.
every new patient that comes in is going to get retained so much better, right? Because you're going to teach retention programs to people who want to and that will listen and recognize that it's not about the money, but it's out in the best interest of the patients to actually retain them and not let them fall off, right? And so I can totally see what you're saying, that the efforts that you put in recruiting and finding A players that are aligned with you can do so much for your business. And once you start finding, when you can start finding those people on the regular, like you get really good at it, like you did towards the end of our ownership, growth becomes really easy.
Yeah, dude. It's
Yeah.
funny too, because like I love how you describe the benefits of like learning how to recruit. The biggest thing is that HR piece. I mean, the headache, the ickiness of having someone say, hey, do you have a few minutes? And having them dump an emotional problem on you, or like, I don't feel accepted here, or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're totally battling against, you're managing by expectation versus agreement. Like, what do
Yeah.
they expect? And everyone has their own piece of it.
Right.
But, I think so for people who are listening, I just would want to ask a question. This is something I ask in my own world with my billing company. Our employees are in the mid 20s now. We're getting close to that 30 employee count.
Mm-hmm.
And I do this on a monthly basis. I go, who would I emphatically rehire each person? Something you and I have talked about in previous podcasts.
Oh yeah.
We asked that question, would I emphatically rehire each person? And it's not like yes, but it's a strong yes or it's no. And if it's anything other than a strong yes, then there's some work to do to coach people up or out of our company. And
Got it.
it might be a lot for people to hear when they're feeling stuck, but I think that's really important because it's going to prevent them from hiring out of desperation.
Right.
And the other thing I would say to the owners is just simply a matter of like, when I coach, I want people to know that their primary customer isn't the patient.
Mm-mm.
It's the team.
When you're an owner, yeah, it changes.
When you're an owner, I used to not hate my team, but I used to get frustrated with my team because it was like, you guys are getting in the way of the experience that I can do so well with my patients. But when I realized finding and taking care of the right people is what made way more of my business grow and gave me freedom, that it was very selfish. It was like, oh yeah, let's go help them have an incredible experience at our company.
Yeah.
And then that's when, growth became a lot more organic. Then recruiting became easier because
a lot more fun.
Yeah, dude, that's what it's about, is the fun of it. If it's not fun, it's time to fire someone.
You're right. But it also, it a lot, and it's so fulfilling when you find those people and you give them opportunities for growth and you're teaching them and they're learning and they're thankful. And, there's a lot of fun that happens and it becomes engaging, and there's fulfillment as well.
Yeah. If it's not, I love that idea. If we're not having a good time, we have to remember that like a fun company requires, of course, constant time and effort, but there's turnover. In a good company, there's turnover. In a good company, the owner is usually the one directing it, meaning, yeah, I love all you guys. And if you don't hit this standard, we're going to upgrade performance because we're always about being the best we can be. Mm-hmm. And a mindset from a team from that perspective, the right A players, they don't only like it, they prefer that culture. Mm-hmm. Because they know they're rock stars. Most rockstar PTs know that they've worked in clinics where they are the rock star, but they don't get treated like that because of the tolerance of the B and C players.
Yes.
It's not like the owner is intentionally slamming them. They're smart. They see that it's unintentional, but they also see it's because the owner is too weak, too fearful to have the cojones to go have those hard conversations with their team members and maybe fire some people. Right.
I think maybe it was a Sean Kirk quote or Scott Fritz, but the best way to lose your A players to tolerate the performance of C players. Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I saw that so many times where I would let someone go and the other employees were like, finally, man, why didn't you do that months ago? I'm like,
I know
really?
no one's ever, we always think when we fire someone that other people are going to quit because we're, I don't know, like that person's going to talk crap about us. But
Right.
it's almost like every time we fire, culture improves every single time.
Every time. Yeah. It makes it so much easier to fire after that.
It does. I've gotten to the point where I thought one point that I could do it like without any fear, but I still get scared.
Oh, sure.
I don't know, man. I've tolerated things in my company, not for a long time, but longer than I should have, just because I'm like
Of course.
in denial.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get better. Maybe I just need to train them more.
Yeah. I need to hold them accountable. I need to do a little bit better. And maybe there is a part of that. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but at the end of the day, they eventually show their true colors.
Totally.
Yeah. And that's where, and coming back, bringing it back around, that's where recruiting makes it so much easier to just then let them go. I'm sorry, it doesn't work here.
Yeah. I love this discussion because I think for a lot of people who are tuning in, they're probably in a mindset of like, yeah, how do I bring people in? And it's an important question, but the bigger question is how do we maximize performance? How do we get the best people we can? And it starts with the mindset, it starts with that attitude of like where we are. Then we can create the job offering, then the ad. And then there's all these cool techniques we can talk about, like group interviews for front desk or tech positions. There's all these different things that can be done on the regular to making sure that there's a constant inflow of people, looking at our company to join it.
Right.
And yeah, there's always room for an A player. I mean, people are afraid of like, what if I find an amazing PT or a front desk and there's not space? You'll find space. It's easy.
They'll make themselves productive too.
That's right.
They'll say, I'll do whatever you want to do. I just want to be a part of your business. And they'll find a way to be productive. And then it's really easy to say, oh, you're so much better than this other person.
I gratefully have never been in a position ever, not with my clients, not with myself, where I've hired people multiple times where I don't think there's space for them, but they're amazing and I'm not going to let them go.
Yeah.
And I've never been in the position thus far where after they've joined the team, where it's like, yeah, I don't have room for both of you and I'm letting the person who was already there go. Normally what happens is that person shows up, they start killing it, and the other person who's a B player typically starts becoming an A player because they don't want to lose their job, and it grows the company. Yeah. So maybe the percentage of arrival goes to 98% because you have not one now, but two amazing front desk.
Right.
That increases without any marketing. All these new patients start flowing in,
right?
And it fills up people's schedule, and then and on we go.
Yeah. Well, if people wanted to find you, and especially regarding the recruiting type of training that you're doing, how do they do it?
So I have a new program called Rockstar Recruiter. I'm really excited about. This is my legacy in life, one of my legacy pieces. And so it's a program. I'll leave the link in the description below for the information. So I'll leave the link to the presentation on the masterclass on creating a powerful job ad. Yeah. I'll also leave a link to the sales page for the course, which is a mix of online training and coaching with me. The other way to get recruiting help is to work with me through my billing company. So anyone who becomes, we have 11 partners, we're going to 20 in total. And so we are accepting people who are interested in joining our billing company. So if you want recruiting help and you're not totally in love with your billing company, 2 birds, 1 stone. Right. And that's really where I live. I live in those are 2 of the 3 spaces that I live in. It's billing, recruiting, and then this third thing that we can talk about another time. But right now it's all 3 of those things go together, because if I can help people find PTs and then I can coach them on how to work with them on a billing level, then there's this magic spark that turns into a flame of growth.
So it makes it really easy to recruit people and bring them on when your revenues are greater and profit margins larger.
Yeah. And I know it's funny because almost everyone I coach at first are like, oh, it's really hard for me to recruit. And I keep telling them that it's easy. It's actually easier now than it's ever been to recruit because everyone else is saying it's hard. I have a client right now, true story, 3 months ago, he told me, he goes, yeah, dude, it's really hard. And here's why. And I lovingly told him to pull his head out of his butt. And then after that, showed him some techniques that he took and like really spun into his own. And he's got one hire. He's got 2 more people he's looking at doing. And that was 3 months ago. And this was after months of not having anything. Well, maybe years of not really feeling confident in the recruiting space, but especially in the last number of months prior to us talking.
Right.
So, yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, check out the course, check out the free masterclass. And then if you are looking for billing, that's the easiest way. If you're in the billing company, you get access to me more personally, and you get access to the online program at no cost. So you get all that bundled up into a very powerful offering on the billing side.
Mm-hmm. How do they get in touch with you regarding the billing stuff?
I could just leave my cell number. I don't know.
Sure.
Like how,
No,
yeah, I'll email and cell. I prefer you guys text me. Email is fine, but like text means you're serious about it. And I only want to work with serious people.
Right. And what is that?
Oh, 480-248-5119. That's right.
Say it again. You need to become. I was going to say, what's the jingle behind it? 480-248. 5119.
5119. Text me anytime except for evenings and on weekends.
Exactly.
Text me anytime on business hours.
That's right. Cool, man. Well, thanks for sharing today. We're going to have you on here soon again. You're going to take someday, you're going to overtake Eric Miller as the most frequent guest on here, but it's going to take a few more episodes.
I didn't know I wasn't the most frequent guest. I have a goal now to become the most frequent guest. And our next episode is going to be fun because it's going to be our top mistakes that we've made.
The biggest mistakes we've made as owners over the years. That'll be a good one. That could go on for a while. There might be 2 or 3 parts to that, depending on
that might be a new podcast that you and I run called Our Stupid Mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Pulling our head out of our asses. Something like that.
I love it. Now you're gonna have to put explicit on the podcast.
I shouldn't have said that. I'll bleep it out. Anyways, all right, man. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it, Will.
Okay, love you.
See you, man.
See you.